This video, I'm going to go over all the ways to collect data, how I collected Reddit data, what went wrong, and the many lessons I learned in this short battle with the Reddit API. For some context to why we're doing this, check out our introduction video to this series. So there are a few ways to collect data. Sometimes it's already collected and stored for you in large files, like with Kaggle or government websites. Sometimes you have to scrape the data yourself with web scrapers, where you extract text or other kinds of data from online web pages. And this usually involves looking through the internal structure of the web pages and pulling info from expected tags or portions. And these can be a pain to work with because not all websites are set up the same, and sometimes they don't even want you taking their data, so they hide it or make it difficult. And if you're lucky, the people working on those applications have developed APIs that's essentially a method for transferring the data to and from the application. For example, with Reddit, their API allows us to get some information we're looking for, like top submissions by a certain subreddit or new posts for the day. They also allow you to automatically comment, subscribe, or anything that you think of doing with your account through these API requests, which is how bots work on Reddit as well. Anyway, this is the more popular option because it's simple and already delivered in a way that's easy to grab and format for our own use. Plus, usually the more interesting data sets are not gathered and put together for a use case we care about, right? So luckily enough as well, there's a library in Python built on top of the Reddit API that allows us to easily request that data through some simple lines of code. This is, however, where our luck starts to run out. With our task of collecting historical data from a particular subreddit in mind, we set off to test the API and see if it will work for what we're after. After about an hour of testing the API and pushing it to its limits, we realized a few things. First is the Reddit API no longer allows queries within a time frame. It only allows for the filters that we see on Reddit itself, like hot, top, controversial, and so on. We could try just grabbing a lot at once, but it only allows for 1,000 submissions per category. So once we learned all we could about the API, here's what we came up with. Okay, so very quickly we start by importing the necessary Python libraries, reading the config file for our password, and starting a Reddit instance based on PRAW's library. And this is for us to communicate back and forth with the Reddit API through Python. The syntax of this is not really important. It's kind of just a standard way of reading config files or setting up the Python instance. Anyway, back down here, we have the first function to extract and preprocess the relevant information, but we'll get back to this. You'll see very shortly where we will use this. Basically, now that we have a connection to the Reddit API, we start by, for example, getting the top posts. And you can do this by saying, okay, Reddit, I want to get the subreddit that I have in mind, the particular subreddit, and then ask for all the top posts. And you can put here a filter of year, month, or top posts of all time. And that's what we're going after, right? We want to go way back as far as possible. And then a limit, which defaults to none. Here, we found out that the Reddit API limits us to 1,000 submissions per any one of these function calls. So unfortunately, it's still limited to 1,000. Anyway, we get all those 1,000 submissions and then we iterate through them. And for each different submission, for each different post, we get the ID to save for later. But more importantly, we save the submission as a dictionary. And going back here, you'll see that we take specifically what's relevant to us. So the number of comments, title, the upvote ratio, and so on. But we also do a little bit of pre-processing, right? We take out specifically the year and also the comments of this post, specifically the ones that are at the top. We limit it to 10 for now, just to save some space for our MVP, just to test it out, right? But this is all the pre-processing we do for each different submission. And then we save that in a larger post dictionary based on the ID of the submission. And we do this for controversial and hot as well. It's exactly the same, only the function call itself is controversial or hot. And then down here, we'll see how we called it, how we call the functions, or how we will call the functions in future episodes. It's as simple as get top posts and then putting in the subreddit and the number of items you want. For testing, I just use 1. So we're trying to get an equal representation all over this subreddit, right? Hopefully we get some representation from top, controversial, and hot. But we're definitely open to ideas on how we can get more working with these restrictions. I've also left some notes on how we could do it in the future, like maybe through random or search requests. But they each come with their complications, which you can read in the notes above too. So really quick, now that we've gone over what it takes to use and run this API, I want to talk about some lessons we learned. So it was good that we're going to this series incrementally, because I ran into a lot of difficulty just trying to get everything working. And I say this because if I had known the Reddit API beforehand, or if I had known the limits or known how to work with it, I wouldn't run into these issues and be able to show you guys what lessons I really take from it. And this is one of the lessons itself, right? The lesson is that it takes a long time to really prepare. But once that's done, execution is so simple, right? Like I took an hour just messing around and testing a bunch of things. But once that was complete, I only spent about 30 minutes just actually building the whole scraping file. And I hope to cover this in more detail at a future point, but that's why our structure for CCA projects will be based on. That's the concept that this future CCA stuff will be based on too. Anyway, lesson 2. As you can tell from the video, I do a lot of Googling, copy-pasting, testing, and heading back to the docs. A lot of junior engineers would think that you should have everything in your head, but our craft is really more about understanding what you're copying and making it your own. So don't be afraid to Google and ask for help, right? That being said, the third lesson we learned was that when working in niche areas like this, the docs, the documentations aren't that helpful for our specific use case. And advice can come from forum posts like 5 years ago, which is exactly the case here, right? I realized too often, as you can see in my testing script, that the code suggested worked years back, but not anymore. Lastly, lesson 4, when working with APIs, always remember the rate limits. I didn't have to worry too much here because we're essentially getting things in bulk. But if we do end up using the random function, for example, which only gives us one submission at a time, we have to be wary not to get ourselves banned by requesting more than once every 2 seconds, which is Reddit's limit. All right, we're done. So just like that, we have something that will allow us to automatically grab and format all the data we can from a subreddit of choice. However, we don't want to grab the data every single time we choose to use it, right? That will make testing and efficiency of use a nightmare. What we need is a place to store the data that we can get for future use. In our next video, we'll see how quickly we can do this with some neat databases. So subscribe, clone the GitHub repo, and stay tuned. Thank you.